Hey, guess what? It is time for Retro Oddities. I say it every time because I mean it. This is my favorite recording that we do because it's really just kind of us shooting the shit here. No real agenda, just talking video games. I'm here with my good friend ShaneIsGames. Shane, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Looking forward to talking about another weird retro game.
Yeah, and today we've got Kodelka. I'm going to probably pronounce it wrong 10 different times, but Kodelka, I think that's more or less right?
I think so. There's a couple different pronunciations in the game itself.
So, well, you know, you're thinking like Kodelka. Even try to say that 2 times fast, it's hard. But you think about that and you're like, man, that is a really cool word. I want to know what that is. What's the mystery behind it? Like, is this some ancient art or technique or civilization? And you get your answer about 2 minutes into the game. The main character says, "Hello, I'm Kodelka." I'm like, well, shit. That was what I was hoping there'd be some big revelation, but no.
The mystery is dead.
So Shane, I actually picked up a copy of this game. Actually, by the way, it's very, very pricey. And I'm not saying that as a flex. I'm just saying it's one of those games that, you know, it's not a Super Mario Brothers 3. There's not a billion copies, and there's kind of a reason why there's not a billion copies out there. If you look at reviews, it's kind of like a middling game there. But I think what's really impressive is, like, you know, I'm a sucker for, you get like a fat PS1 jewel case, right? And you open it up and you're like, whoa, look at all these discs. Can you count how many discs there are, Shane? I think I had to stop and restart a couple times, but
no, I had to pull my abacus out of storage just for this specifically. I think it's a whopping 4, I believe.
Four discs on the PS1. Again, that's like Final Fantasy territory, right?
And this is a turn-based JRPG too, so it's setting up some expectations right there.
So, you know, I was a little concerned. Now, I am familiar with the again, I'm not sure how the whole like lineage or, you know, family tree, if you will, of Kodelka was, but I do know that in some way it was made by some of the same people that did Parasite Eve. And so, you know, Parasite Eve 1 and 2 are fairly short games, but I see this 4-disc epic and I'm like, man, I'm in for a ride because I've seen Final Fantasy. You know, you got Final Fantasy 8, you got 9, the multi-disc affairs, 80, 90, 100 hours. And I'm like, oh, did we make a bad call here trying to cover this game in a couple weeks there? I gotta admit, I didn't have a lot of I didn't spend quite as much time as I was thinking. I don't know, how did you get on there?
I think, of course, I was streaming it this time. So, you know, there's a lot of...
You got all those donos and those subs. You got to like pause for that. So that's usually inflates your game by like twice, right? You know, 2x.
Right. So this is going at the slowest pace possible, you know, getting lost, wandering around, chatting with people. I think I topped out at 16 hours.
4 discs. That's 4 hours per disc.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And how about you? What were you getting for this one?
So I did not, no one subscribed or donated to me, which I was very upset about.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I think maybe next time I'll try streaming it and see if that gets them in there. But apparently I can't just get money for playing games in my underwear and with no one watching me. Like, I don't know, what is this?
It's a damn shame.
Why even bother with life, right? So I did, and again, I did heavily use a guide. I think we can chat about kind of the adventure portion of the game a little bit. But
yeah.
I did use a guide to kind of, whenever I was like, okay, I'm really, really stuck, I'd look at a guide, but often I'd be like, okay, I think I know where I need to go, so I try it out. But yeah, I think I beat it in about 10 hours. I don't exactly remember my save, but yeah. And I feel like I covered, you know, there's not a lot of side quests or any side quests. Oh, you know what? There is one, and I'd like to know if you get this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it is? Because it sounded like you were going to say it.
Are we talking about the optional boss?
Okay, there is that, but there's also a chest near the very beginning of the game.
I know the chest. I never got it opened.
I I skipped it, and I was like, this must be something that I need to do later, and I never found out what it is. And the reason I felt okay about that is immediately after going to that chest, you go into this room, and there's like some sort of cutscene there, and I accidentally hit a button which skipped the cutscene.
Oh, no.
Crap. Well, let me go onto YouTube, let me do a walkthrough, and just kind of rewatch that cutscene, because that one's actually kind of important. I think it's, Kodelka herself is kind of like keeled over because she's experiencing some sort of like sonic resonance or ghosts or something.
Right.
And so it is kind of an important bit, so I'm glad I watched that. But I saw that the person playing that also skipped that chest. I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel like there's probably some information I don't have yet, and I'm sure it will come later. But I'm really bummed out that you didn't find out what that chest is. I feel like we should do some live investigation to find out what is in that chest. What do you say, Shane?
I would be down for that, because, like, I'd forgotten the chest existed. You're bringing it up now, and now I'm going to be haunted by it. What is in that stupid chest?
Yeah. Why is it searching? Okay, I'm searching, and it's telling me Elden Ring stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. Elden Ring, don't touch this chest. Knowing early game, I think I know what they're talking about. Must include Kodelka. Let's see if that works. No, it doesn't. So yeah, we'll have to do some investigation, and I don't know, maybe we'll post it in Discord.
That works.
You all can see what it is. But do you want to kind of walk through like the actually, before I ask you, let me kind of state something.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to come into these conversations as like just kind of two friends coming together and not trying to be an expert on anything, but just really like, I don't really know what I experienced. What do you think? And just kind of like so it's just kind of like discourse between two friends, as opposed to saying, all right, this is, ABC, we're having this critical analysis of the story. So I got to say, I don't know that I fully understood the story. And I, of course, didn't look it up because I like to have this podcast kind of just be people figuring it out. So I'd love for you to walk me through like what you think the story is.
It was a little weird because I think part of what made the detachment of the game is you got three characters in the game. You got Kodelka, the main character, of course. You got Edward, we'll call him the himbo.
The himbo?
The
I
himbo.
gotta look up that word. I don't know what that word means, man. I hope that's not something I need to act. Attractive but unintelligent man.
There you go.
Okay. I was gonna say, Shane, I know you. I just make sure I don't have to be like bleeping stuff out here.
You know me, the king of vulgar. And then you've got James, the cranky priest.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it interesting is you've got all three of the characters have different levels of involvement in the story. And none of them really feel like the viewpoint character necessarily. Because like a lot of JRPGs, you've got like one character who's the chosen one, and everything that happens you see through their eyes, and everyone else is kind of the sidekick. And that really isn't the way they tell the story in here.
Yeah, that's right. I think, again, Kodelka is probably the closest thing to it, but it is, I don't feel like it's her story. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. So they've come to this mansion. It's called Nemeton, I believe. Nemeton?
What? Whoa, okay. I didn't know how to name.
Yeah. It was formerly a monastery, and then they built a mansion on top of it, which that just sounds like you're starting a ghost story right there already. And they're all there for different reasons. Kodelka has heard some sort of ghostly whispering leading her there. Edward hears there's treasure.
Of course,
He wants some treasure. And James, the owner of the mansion, is a former friend of his that sort of said, hey, I'm in some trouble. Could you come here and help me out?
Right.
So James is the only one that actually like has a concrete connection to this place. Whereas Kodelka and Edward have never been there. He
also has a reason for being there, right? He heard that there's what does he call it? It's some sort of document, right? What is that thing called?
The Emerge manuscript.
Yeah, the Emerge. And I think he knows what it is. Is that right? I mean, you learn what it is, but does he know what it is?
He does, yeah. He's got a vague idea. He knows it's from the church. He knows it's bad mojo. And he's sort of been sent on a quest to bring it back.
Yeah, because, by the way, I think these are always kind of open for spoilers, and honestly, I don't think people are going to be like, "Man, this game sounds amazing. I will go out and get it right now." So, always be aware that these things we're gonna talk about it as, again, just two friends that are like sharing experiences and kind of sharing what the story is, so you don't have to play the game. But it's always worth considering, like, hey, if you are wanting to play this game, you might want to dip out of this episode. But the document is basically talks about resurrection of dead people, right?
Right. And that's what the person who stole it in the mansion, Patrick, was trying to use it for. His wife was killed in a random robbery, and he decided he was going to use arcane powers to try and bring her back.
You know, why not?
Yeah, sure. You know, everybody's been there.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the wife, though. It's never like the dog. You had to be until John Wick came along. That's like, no, I mean, we gotta do some with, like, dogs are awesome. I'd bring my dog from the dead.
Where is the JRPG where you're on an epic quest to resurrect your second cousin twice removed? You know, you seem like a good guy.
I mean, isn't that Final Fantasy VII? I mean, something like that. I think you could probably thread the needle some way to kind of hit that, right?
You could make the argument, I think, if you're trying. So they all come to this mansion, and they all have, for all the different reasons, they get tangled up in what had happened, that ritual that went very wrong. And they end up trying to put right what was done in the mansion in the end. They never are 100% on this, but I get the idea it's like Resident Evil 1 and they can't necessarily leave. But they don't ever really go into that.
Yeah, again, I think it's one of those where the callings for all characters are too strong for them to give up this mission. They all feel compelled, like especially Kodelka, because she has this ghostly call, right? This spirit that's talking to her, and the spirit is, I forget her name. It's a girl though, right?
Charlotte, right?
Charlotte, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So Charlotte is a deceased, very young girl who I think she died on a boat. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, most likely the Titanic or something like that.
Probably.
And so she's kind of learning. It's not like she can communicate them just like, hey, how you, she doesn't have like speak with dead, you know, if you Dungeons and Dragons thing. It's sort of like she's seeing these as she's going through the mansion. She's seeing more, like I think she sees some pictures and that kind of gives her some flashbacks. And then I think she actually talks to the girl at some point and learns more there.
Right.
Go ahead.
I don't think she had like a pile of information going into this. She just sort of has this vague sense. There's this girl's in trouble. I need to come here, find out some more information, help her get some rest.
Yeah. And so that's more or less, you know, the story there. And there's, I wouldn't say there's twists and turns. I don't know. I think it's kind of a straightforward thing. I think there are some cool things as you learn more about the dark history of the mansion, which is pretty cool. But I do want to take a moment to really commend the team for the voice acting and the animations. Most likely that is what took all those CDs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of the types of games that were coming out at that time, actually, I want to fact check this. When did Resident Evil 1 come out?
So
let's see.
I actually have some interesting information related to that.
Oh, go for it. Yes.
So
I'll look this up and then you tell me this.
While you're looking that up, I want you to think about a couple things. Think about what the character models look like in the game. Think about the fact that they used fixed camera angles in the game. And think about the fact that it's a horror game.
Okay.
So the director of this game, when he originally pitched the game, he pitched it as a third-person survival horror game, directly inspired by Resident Evil.
From Resident Evil, okay. I see that, yeah.
What changed there was the staff he'd hired on was from games like Parasite Eve. So he'd built an entire team of JRPG, game designers. And they're all like, no, we don't want to make a third-person survival game. So they actually overruled him. That was the word he's used, is overruled. But you can kind of feel like, once you know that, you can feel the framework of that in there. The whole concept of like Resident Evil Mansion.
So much like, picking up shards of glass and you're like, you have picked up the green shard of glass. Great. You've picked up the red shard of glass. Okay, I've got like 10 shards of glass here. I'm sure I'll need them for some point, but here you go. You just find some stained glass and shove it in there. It's no problem. So it's a lot of that sort of like just you pick up a dude's hand.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure you're going to need that. So just hold on to it. Also, what's really weird is your inventory. There's no space for like key items.
No.
So it's like, you want to pick up this item that you need to progress the crit path. Tell me which item you like to destroy.
Which weapon do you never want to have again, just in case that little piece of garbage you found 3 hours ago is important?
But yeah, it's totally that Resident Evil, right? Where it's like you take the square peg, you put it in the round hole, and the door opens, and you move on.
Exactly.
I think the what made it a little more difficult for me though is you're talking about the JRPG stuff, where in Resident Evil you can kind of run around the zombies, or you can kill them, and then you don't have to deal with them anymore. You just keep running through the hallways. So it makes that sort of process of discovery. It's like, okay, how do I need this symbol? How do I find this symbol? And you just run around all the mansion and find it, right? Whereas in Kodelka, you're basically running around this huge mansion or monastery, and you're having random battles all over the place. And they're pretty slow.
Yeah.
They're really slow. And so for everything I'm talking about in terms of the combat's pace, so like...
Oh, hang on, Wiz, your mic just went out. If you're talking right now, I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? Test.
All right, there, I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah. You went out.
All right, well...
You went out for about 10 seconds there.
Oh, no. Okay. Thanks for the heads up.
No
there.
worries.
Let me tweak some stuff. All right, cool. We're playing it off the cuff here, folks. Don't worry about it. So yeah, combat, you'll do a lot of random combat, but I would say that more often than not, the time spent loading into the combat was longer than the actual combat.
Like that camera fly-in they do at the very beginning?
Yeah. Because, I generally 1 or 2 shot enemies.
Yeah.
So let's talk about combat. And I want to know the hot tips you've got to be, to be a Kodelka expert. What was your choices of weapons and spells, and how did you arrange your party?
Well, for Kodelka, I kind of built her as the spellcaster.
Canonically, that's correct, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, she actually does have magic in the game, so I did that. And I sort of noticed, like, when characters level up, they get some stats automatically, and then you can assign others. So I just sort of saw her spellcasting abilities were going up really fast. I'm like, all right, I'll leave her as that.
Yeah, you can get them up to 99. That's the max.
Oh, really? I don't think I hit any maxes. Interesting. So James, I had sort of as my support caster / healer.
Yeah.
Which is especially nice for the bosses.
/ resurrector.
Right. And Edward, I just sort of leaned into his status as himbo. Had him run straight towards the enemies and hit him with whatever I had on hand. And
okay, so you went with the melee weapons. I kind of noped out of them.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because they kept breaking on me. And the manual clearly says, hey, the weapons will break on you, but I kind of got sick of having to weapon break in the middle of combat. And you're like, all right, now I got to spend a round to equip them with a new weapon or something.
Right. I sort of thought...
Did you have
I thought I would end up with like a favorite weapon by the end of the game. But the fact is, because they do break so often, my favorite weapon was just the one that he grabbed out of the inventory.
Whatever I'm holding.
Basically.
So it's a little weird how the weapons work versus the magic, because you can level up your weapons, which I actually really, really like. The more you use your weapons and spells, the more XP you get, which makes you do more damage. Like you can, I think with melee weapons, you'll have additional attacks. So
Right.
if you hit level 3, you can hit 3 attacks.
Mhm.
If with magic, the higher levels actually allow you to hit enemies surrounding the other enemies and do more damage there.
Right, that's basically how you unlock the AoEs, is just by using the magic a lot.
Yeah.
I thought the way they presented combat was interesting too, because when you first start, it seems like it's a tactical like grid, but it's really not, is it?
It's really not.
Like,
It's really not. Yeah.
like you can't get behind the enemies. There's this hard line wherever they're standing that really limits
so
what
weird.
options you get.
Yeah, like it's a what, call it a 5x5 or 6x5 or 6x6 grid. So there's plenty of space on either side. But as they advance, they kind of bring the whole board down with you. So honestly, you just kind of sit there and you wait for enemies to come and you punch them in the face or you shoot them with fireballs, and it's whoever dies first. So it was a little weird. It seemed, honestly, I think everything I could say about this is it's really half-baked, where they had maybe the trappings of a really great game here and they just weren't able to execute. Because combat was mostly fun, but I never felt like I was identifying unique monster types, like playing any sort of strategy. My strategy was just like get Kodelka to cast that fireball, and I used a revolver for Edward, and he just like feather the trigger, pew 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 pew, and then James was just there to kind of clean up the mess, heal, buff, and all that. In every single combat, I did the exact same thing.
Which honestly, for me, I think is probably the game's saving grace. Because if this game had these mechanics that were, as you said, kind of half-baked, and it was also a really hard game, I don't think I would have wanted to finish. But the fact I was able to sort of keep coasting so I could see the new enemies, see the story, keep moving through this cool mansion, I was fine with that. That's what kind of made it work for me, is just the fact I could keep moving like that. One other thing, too, as far as it being half-baked is, something you expect from turn-based tactical is terrain. And I think there's one fight in the entire game that has anything on the field.
Probably the hardest fight.
Oh, yeah.
It was the hardest fight for me.
Oh, it was insane. That's the only place I died multiple times.
You're talking about the guy with the gun, right? He would hide behind the 2 boxes. Yeah, actually, then I took his gun and used it for a good portion of the game.
Nice.
But yeah, he's tough because, again, the way I would structure is Kodelka was an absolute glass cannon, which is okay because I had my tank in front of her.
Sure.
And so she would go in there and, my melee guy, he would do like 300 points of damage. Kodelka would do like 4,000 points of damage. And I'm like, magic is so overpowered. But the problem with that is she just had very little hit points. And so this guy, when you fight him, he's kind of this roguish guy. And he opens up and he just unloads on Kodelka. Like almost every single time I fought him, he would one-shot Kodelka. I'm like, okay. Well, that's unfortunate. And then I have to have my healer resurrect Kodelka, which comes in with just 1 hit point. And so he turns around and shoots her again. So it's like...
And on top of that, I
eventually got it.
I think they were trying to do a cover type concept, because if I'm remembering correctly,
weird,
like if the boxes are up, you just miss everything you do against him, right?
Yeah. Even if you cast Fireball on his face, it's like, well, he's hiding behind a box, so you miss him. So you have to kill both boxes. He'll kind of alternate between the boxes. One box gets blown up, and he'll move to another box there.
I see what they were going for, but it's a really simplistic execution for that.
Yeah. And also, like, I'll tell you what, so let's talk about equipment.
All right.
Because I think that's a big part of combat, and there's some interesting things to talk about. So you have a weapon, okay? So you can equip some sort of like melee or gun weapon. Often what I would do is have the melee people have a melee or gun, and then I would have something that's more of like a sigil or something to kind of help, not really attack, but like help boost the casting stats for my characters, and then they'd use those, right?
Right.
So you have kind of like your attack / magic boosting thing in your primary hand. Then you had accessories, which, by the way, one of the reasons I was just stomping through it is I found early on, it might have been random, I found 2 rings, which basically gave like doubled Koudelka's intelligence, which doubled her damage basically. And then, at least on the menu says there's armor. Throughout the entire game, I found one piece of armor for all 3 characters, and so I put it on Kodelka. Everyone else is just like running around naked.
So this is actually weird. So I've mentioned before, like I test out a game for like an hour before I stream it. So when I tested this game out, I tested it up to the first boss. And in my test, I had armor on all 3 characters before the first boss. Then I played the game on stream, and it was 5 hours before I got my first piece of armor. The whole time I'm just muttering, what is going on here? Where is all the armor all of a sudden?
And again, it's not like there's side quests. It's not like there's hidden alcoves. It's just you get it from killing enemies, and it's random. Now, I will say there is a luck stat, which, by the way, when you read this luck, it says, it controls the encounter rate or something like that. Like, does that mean more luck means more encounters? Because I don't want that.
The game's pretty good at explaining the stats, except luck, where it suddenly gets very vague.
Yeah, so maybe luck would increase the loot. Now, there is a little thing in the manual that says if you're having trouble finding armor and whatever, they say, just go explore. Just explore, Shane. Just go explore.
I don't think I ever found a chest that had armor in it. I think all the armor I had was just from enemy drops.
Yeah. Did you manage to get all your characters equipped with the rings, though?
I did, and you're correct. They had huge stat ups, especially for spellcasters. It was insane.
Yeah, and again, I literally one-shot a boss, which was just ridiculous. And the combat is just all over the place. This boss came in, and one of the cool things you can do is, you can buff up the intelligence of your characters through other characters. So, James basically cast on Kodelka, upgrade to your intelligence, and Kodelka turns around and hits this boss for 9999. And this is like hour 5.
Oh my god.
Like, what is happening? And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep pumping that intelligence, and that's how I hit 99 on her, because I was just like, I'm gonna ride the damage.
Yeah, that's smart. I didn't get quite a one-shot, but I know a couple of the early bosses, I went in and, I'm on stream. So I'm like, all right, here's my strategy. I'm going to have her do this. I'm going to have him do this. Yeah. This is what we'll do round 1, round 2. And I got a couple of round 2 clears. And I'm just sitting here like, well, that was anticlimactic.
They do have a lot of bosses, though. I'll give them that.
They do.
And I actually almost feel like there's a little too many bosses, because you're like, I just fought a boss not 15 minutes ago. Or like the room behind me, I was literally fighting. I think there's one sequence where you fight like fake Kodelka, fake James, and fake Edward, and then either immediately after or like a little bit before you had fought another boss. So that one was a little weird.
Yes, the fake one was a pretty difficult boss too. I found that a little bit challenging. I
just take down Kodelka first.
Oh yeah, always get the spellcaster.
Then you're good. I hit the spellcaster. Yeah.
I do want to say this is a good place to mention. I love the enemy designs in the game, and the bosses in particular were just really cool looking.
I'm trying to remember the end boss now. Do you remember? It was like a dragon. It was like a ghostly.
Yeah, it was like
it turned into like some sort of dragon, right?
Some sort of like big dragon zombie thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's kind of crawling. Yeah, so I love that. At the end of the game, there's supposed to be something that's chasing you, right? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing actually chasing you. And I think it's just as you get to a certain step, it's like, they've caught up with you, so it's a forced encounter. I don't think that's timed at all. I think that's just like, you have to fight it twice before you get to the top.
I'm pretty sure you're correct.
I don't know if you. Yeah. It's just kind of funny. It was like, it's this intense chase scene. Where you don't actually have to run. The fact of you running causes the encounter. So you think about that for a minute, right?
Oops.
But I gotta say, there was something really addicting of the level up cadence. I think when I finished the game, all my characters around level 46, 47. Curious where you ended up, but I will say the I feel like every 2 or 3 combats, maybe even less, maybe like every 1 to 2 combats, one of my characters would level, and that's always a cool feeling.
Yeah, I feel like some JRPGs, they space it out too much. Whereas, that kind of reward hit is just such a great motivation to keep going. Especially in a game like this where you get to assign your stats. You feel like you're having an impact on your characters every time you get that level up. I love that.
And you do get some spells, but honestly, it's kind of mad. You kind of unlock the 4 elements. You have fire, wind, earth, air, more or less. And then later on, you get a spell called Reflect, but that's it. You don't find like new spells. And again, your new spells really are just that you use fire enough, and now it's like fire level 2.
Mm-hmm.
But the weird thing is, it takes more mana, right?
Right.
But you can't cast the previous level of the spell.
Correct.
Which I thought was really interesting. So it's like, all right, well, if you level up your ability, your magic, it costs more mana, so maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you can kind of paint yourself into a corner if you weren't building up your MP supplies as well.
Yeah. But again, the thing is when you level up, right, you get all your stats refilled. So you basically only have to last like 3 or 4 fights, and then you can get a free heal.
Right. I thought it was interesting. There's never like an antidote spell either. Like there's nothing to cure conditions in the game aside from items.
I'm trying to think of any conditions that were really on your. Well, you'd have silence, but that would end at the end of the battle.
Right, and there's like a poison. A couple enemies did that.
Oh yeah, that's right. A little bit of a poison there.
It wasn't a huge issue, but it's just something I expect from a JRPG, and it was a little surprised it never came up.
Now I want to talk about the last boss here, because the last boss for me was just one of the dumbest. I'm thinking like Castlevania 2 style, ridiculously easy bosses.
Oh my gosh.
There was no challenge to it whatsoever. And because I made a very crucial decision.
All right, you good?
I made a very crucial decision in the beginning of the fight.
What was that?
And, well, I want to know how you fought it, because I want to know if you did the same thing.
Well, I made a mistake the first time I fought her. And I think this is probably why you had such an easy time.
Okay.
Because I didn't realize till later that on her first couple of forms, she generally stays put. She doesn't really move around.
Yeah.
But it turns out if you rush into melee range, she will absolutely kill the crap out of your guys.
Yeah, I was sitting there pinging her with my gun, so yeah, that makes sense.
She was hitting for like 4 or 5 grand. So like the first
Oh
yeah.
Whoa, with melee.
With melee. So after I'm like, what happens if I try hitting her with a gun? And for the first couple phases, she doesn't approach you. So you're free to attack her at range.
She does attack you in other ways though,
yes,
right?
She does attack you with range, but it doesn't hit, for me at least, with my build, it wasn't hitting nearly as hard as that melee.
It was hitting my my melee guy because I didn't spec him to
spell resist kind of thing?
Magic, right? But there's a different way to get around that.
What's that?
Remember that reflect spell I had mentioned?
Oh no.
Yeah. So on what you do, the first thing you do in that combat, you cast reflect on everyone. It's done. She can't hurt you.
Oh my god.
Just stay at range. She'll continuously cast that spell and just damage herself. And she does damage a lot. It would be like 200.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you just sit there and you're like, all right, well, enjoy, because I'm not taking any damage. I'm just sitting here hitting you for 8,000-9,000 with my spells and stuff. So trivialize that fight.
I don't think I cast Reflect the entire game, and now I'm regretting that decision.
I cast it twice. Just twice. And I think it was like a previous boss encounter that I used it on, and so it was kind of fresh in my memory.
Mm-hmm.
That was a thing. I was like, this would be stupid if this were. Oh god, that works. Okay.
I was a little wary of casting it because it's my understanding it bounces cure as well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so you kind of have to be like, all right, well, I'm not gonna cure or buff or whatever these people.
But for the final boss, it sounds like that's just fun.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's again, it was a fun game. I really enjoyed my time with it. It's but again, you wonder like what would another year of development bring to the title? Would this have been one of those games that is revered as a classic?
I really feel like
I guess we'll never know.
I really feel like there's bedrock foundation here. Like
yeah, there really is.
There's something you can build upon. This isn't like a game where you're like, oh, that's a bad idea or that never would have worked. No, I think if with a little bit of polish, this could really be an amazing game. And I did have fun with it too. It was really cool. One thing that we couldn't stop talking about on my stream is the fact that there just isn't really any other horror-themed JRPGs. And that makes this completely stand out even after all these years that have gone by. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think I don't remember who the director is, but I think they set forth to make a more mature JRPG because he was kind of looking at the market and was like, hey, all these JRPGs kind of have the same, maybe not whimsical, but you think about like more, I don't know how to describe it, just not as dark as what we have in Kodelka, because there's some more mature themes that happen throughout the story, and it's not like there's happy endings all around. It's just kind of like, oh, that's kind of depressing, and these people kind of have a bad situation here, and there's no way to really help them out, and so that's interesting. I can see they hit what they were going for in terms of that.
I think they were right to try and go into that niche, and I really appreciate that they did.
I think you had mentioned you had some behind the scenes things to discuss. I'm not sure if we covered them all or if there's other things you wanted to chat about there.
There was one thing I wanted to mention because you said you liked the voice acting in the game, which I did as well. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So
let's talk about that.
There's something really interesting about the voice actors in the game, which is the voice actors also did mocap.
Yeah.
Which, as you can imagine, for PS1, that wasn't super common. And the way they did it for this game in particular was very special because the director was insistent that for scenes like, let's say the one where Kodelka's talking to Edward in front of the fireplace. Great scene.
Mm-hmm. That's when they're drinking, right?
Right.
Yeah, I was going to comment that's probably one of the highlights of the game.
So the director was insistent that for scenes like that, he wanted the mocap to be done with the actors in the same room together at the same time.
Yeah.
And at the time, there wasn't any motion capture studios that could do that. So he ends up going to California to do the motion capture because that was the only studio he could find that did multi-person simultaneous mocap. And so all of the actors for the game are American. And if you were to get the Japanese version of Kodelka, it's still got the same voice acting as the English version. Because he thought that since it was a game that took place in English-speaking territory, it would just be good to leave it there. Mm-hmm. But I honestly, I think it paid off. For scenes like the fireplace scene, knowing that those two actors are actually sitting there together, doing their lines back at each other, I think it really added to the way that scenes like that really played out.
Well, I'm reminded of Resident Evil 1 and 2, where you have like a character delivers a line and then you hear like your CD going to try to get the next line, right? Mm-hmm. And there's big awkward pauses there. I'm pretty sure what they did is they have one WAV file or one MP3 or whatever they were using, and all their dialogue is on there because I don't think stitching of audio was that sophisticated back in the PS1 era, and there's no artifacts of that at all. It all, like you said, it seems like it's very seamless. Like there's two people chatting in a room, and they're not recording individual parts, or if they are, they're at least stitching those together manually, such that they're only playing one actual audio file during that entire scene.
Right.
And I think that was a big step forward for this game.
Right. They didn't have to do that. Like nobody else was doing it at the time, but I think they got really big dividends for doing that. It absolutely paid off. Yeah. One other thing too is you also mentioned that you thought the video and audio probably took up a lot of space on the disc. Mm-hmm. One of my viewers actually popped his disc in the PC and looked at the file structure. On all four of the discs, more than half of the space is taken up just by the videos.
Not surprising. So the just the pre-rendered CGI.
Just those pre-rendered cinematics takes up more than half of the space on each of the four discs. Mm-hmm. Which, we were talking about how short the game is for 4 discs, but that's absolutely what it was right there.
Yeah, I mean, very fun though. To I think moment by moment. And again, I love having the discs. It just feels like you're getting a massive game. And even if it's all just audio, even if it's all just video, it feels like it's a high budget game.
Maybe this might be nostalgia talking, but it's like watching a TV show back in the day where it ends on a to be continued. When something big happens in the game and then it's like insert disc 2.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point there.
Big cliffhanger feel.
I'm trying to think if there were any cliffhangers though.
I don't think so. I mean,
if there's any.
Usually there was like a big cinematic that rounded out the disc.
Yeah.
But they weren't like in peril at any point or anything like that.
Well, I think I've kind of covered everything I wanted to cover. Do you want to move on to our next little segment here, Shane?
Sure, let's do it.
Now, this is the first time we've had this situation happen, but we can pretend it hasn't happened because Kodelka actually did have sequels. Shadow Hearts and then Shadow Hearts Covenant are the sequels to Kodelka, at least in some way. I don't know how close they are. I just know they're considered part of a trilogy there.
They take place in the same universe, and Kodelka actually does show up in Shadow Hearts.
Okay. How about Covenant? Do you know if she's in that one?
She's not, but it's the same universe again.
Okay. So let's pretend none of that happened, and we just have Kodelka, and we say, Shane, the spirits are calling you, and the spirits say, we need Kodelka too.
All right.
What are you going to do? What do you do to appease the dead?
Well, I think what we got to do is we've got to lean into what they've already left us with. Because we've seen Kodelka, we've seen Edward. And what are they clearly hinting at with those two? That's right, buddy cop comedy.
That's exactly where I thought this was going.
Kodelka and Edward traveling the world, solving crimes, getting into messes. There's at least got to be one cinema with Kodelka, hands on hips, shaking her head. Oh, Edward. Little bit of trombone in the background.
Okay, so this is a straight up comedy then.
Oh, of course.
It's not. Okay.
I think that's where they were leading the series. That's the vibe I got is, we're trying to build a comedy epic right here. Were you not getting that?
Yeah, that's more or less what I got from there. Now, my question is, do you incorporate the mansion? Do you bring the mansion with you? Maybe it's a mansion that's got legs and just follows them around as like the awkward brother in the whole relationship. You're like, yeah, I know. He's always with us. What do we do about this?
That's their equivalent of the Scooby van, basically. The Nemeton Mobile.
Well, who's driving?
Oh, they'll have to argue about it. That'll be the first 10 minutes of every disc is them arguing about who gets to drive the mansion. It'll be hilarious.
Okay, all right. So I've got a very good understanding of what this game is and what takes place, but I think the locales are gonna be the make or break. So the first game, Kodelka was set in more or less Wales, right?
Wales? I think Scotland.
Okay, I thought I saw it as Welsh, but it could have been Scotland. I don't know my UK history or geography very well. So anyway, so let's say it's Scotland. All right, cool. So we've got that taken care of. Where next?
Well, you've got a Japanese dev team. You've got some UK-based characters. Have them head over to Japan, have some classic fish out of water comedy.
Okay, so like Akihabara, maybe?
Exactly. You got some classic Japanese ghosts right there, fit into the horror theme.
Okay.
It writes itself.
Okay. I could see that. All right, let's pick one more because I want you to really think like outside the box here.
All right.
Where do they go after Japan?
Where do they go after Japan? So that's the tough part because now you've done basically every country on the planet. You got the UK, you got Japan.
What about this? What about this? Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna workshop something.
Let's hear it.
I don't usually get involved in these design decisions, but I have a really good one. So they bring the mansion up to Antarctica.
Ooh.
And it's straight up like The Thing.
Oh my God. One of my favorite horror movies.
Yes, and one of them, they're kind of like isolated, and they have the cast of 3, and one of them has been possessed by the ghost of Charlotte.
Oh my God.
But you can't tell which one it is.
I kind of want this.
All right. Well, I think, Shane, you know what to do to make this happen. Why don't you tell all of the fantastic viewers and listeners how you can make this game a reality?
Well, if you want to stop by my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/ShaneIsGames, you can earn some channel currency, which has no monetary value. And then you can
That's just legal speak, by the way. Ignore that bit. He has to say that so he doesn't get sued. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that.
It has no monetary value, but it has value.
Oh yeah, in our hearts, I think. Hearts and minds. And then you donate that back to me, and I accumulate that. I definitely keep track of that. I don't just completely ignore all of those. That would be crazy. Don't even think that.
I've seen the spreadsheet he has. It's ridiculous. It goes back to 1920.
Gigs and gigs. And then hopefully we can use all of that completely pretend imaginary money to fund these sequels that absolutely need to be put into play.
Did we think of a subtitle for the game?
We did not.
Kodelka 2 :
Kodelka with a vengeance.
I think you could. That's kind of the cheap way out. You can just take any game and say with a vengeance. Game name with a vengeance.
It's so
but,
it's such a good subtitle. Okay. They can't just keep it to one movie. They got to spread that around.
All right, that's awesome. So we'll be looking forward to, Kodelka 2 coming up based in Japan and Antarctica with a vengeance. So head on over to ShaneIsGames, please. By the way, we still have that incentive going on. Shane, how are we going on your channel subs there? I'm not going to let this drop, by the way.
We are definitely almost there and not miles and miles away. I don't even know why you'd suggest that. That's crazy.
So as a reminder, folks, ShaneIsGames will be doing a complete live reading of the Harvester design document. I think it's design document or prototype script or whatever when he gets 250 channel subscriptions. And so this is a good opportunity to make him suffer and bring a little joy into everyone's life. So hashtag Harvester Read Through. We're using that Twitter tag. Notify your friends, your aunts, your uncles, your grandmas, your grandfathers, all that. And let's make this happen. Again, 250 channel subs at ShaneIsGames. He'll do a lengthy reading in a full Shakespearean accent. So this will be something you do not want to miss.
Explosive enthusiasm for every line, I promise you.
I think there's probably some things in there we probably will have to skip over if it's still there. That game's not exactly the best in terms of writing and kind of being inclusive there. So
not all of it is age grade.
Yeah, it's a weird game.
It is. It is.
And if you hadn't already played it, if we aren't already funding the sequel, I would have suggested we play that.
We're a little too close to the situation as it is.
A little too close, yeah. But hey, thank you so much for listening to Retro Oddities, folks. If you want to support this show and future shows and past shows, you can head over to SaturdayMorningGamingShow.com. You get all the links there, including a Patreon link there. You can subscribe to us, kind of join the family there, help support our efforts. And it's got links for all of the shows we do. Everything you could ever want is at that, except for we don't have. Actually, we do have links to ShaneIsGames. So you every single link you need there is on that website. Otherwise, you could always head over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Gaming Show, and you can go straight there. And again, we do release episodes on YouTube or your general podcast stuff, Google, iTunes, all that good stuff. So subscribe to us there. You can drop ratings there. That helps make us feel good. It's kind of like those imaginary channel points there. It's worthless, but it helps us in our hearts. So feel free to do that. And with that, I think that's going to wrap it up. Shane, any last minute words here? You want to talk about Kodelka?
No. I think we covered everything, and I'm glad we got to tell people about it. I love that little game.
It's an interesting game. So hopefully we didn't spoil too much. If you are interested in checking it out, all 4 discs, please give that a playthrough and post in our Discord what you think about it. But until next time, we'll see you.